Alright, here's a K series, and it came in, it has the limit light, the power light stuck on, and the mic light is on. Of course it's set to mic, and both signal lights are on, and the customer claims it does not work. Now I've opened it up and I've removed these things that sit on top of the FETs, and I just wanted to check to make sure that the FETs aren't shorted, and tested this FET, tested these FETs. None of them have any signs of shorts, so that's a good sign. So I'm pretty sure that the problem will be in the input card. Plus, with that thing set to microphone, maybe the input section got blasted. Who knows? Okay, there's a way to test the DSP, and that's by hook a ground wire, and then you tag this, there's a capacitor there. You tag the positive side of that capacitor, and then you put 7 volts DC into it. And so what I do is I set up my external supply. That's not working. Hold on, let me get my wiring straight. Alright, got my power supply set up for 7 volts. So I take these 2 wires and I tag them into the 7 volts. Alright, there we go. We're ready. Alright, so we put the 7 volts in. And according to the manual, if you get the red and the green to both light, that tells me that the DSP is booting up and working properly. So that's a good sign. Red and green. So now I remove the red wire that I had jumpered to the cap. The 7 volts from my power supply is no longer hooked up, and I plug the ribbon connector back into the main board. And what I do is I jumper into the power supply. I guess those 2 tags, that's where I go with my 120 going in. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the 120 on, going into the bucket board, and power this up, and let's see what happens. Get the red blink, green light came on, and now the blue is on. That's a good sign. Alright, so this input light is out, this input light is out. Interesting. All right. Alright, so when I rotate this selector switch, this looks normal with the selector switch in the 0 position, but when I switch to 12, the clip light comes on, or the limit light. So the limit light is on in every position except for the lowest position. It's very interesting. Alright. I have a feeling that while this was in mic mode, see the limit light comes on? When you put it in 0, it seems to work normal, so I have a feeling that somebody blasted the input so hard they damaged whatever the first op amp is. So I'll try swapping out that op amp. I'll look at the schematic and figure out where that's at and see if that fixes our problem. I think it's pretty close to working though. This is not in too bad a shape. Okay, next I want to check if L3 and L4 are blown open. And so here's L4. Alright, that looks good. And here is L3. This is kind of hard to get to, but so you go from the input jack, and then it goes through L4, so we have continuity from one side to the other. Here's L4 again. I got one probe on L4. And one probe on pin 2. So it looks like L3 and L4 are not blown. So that, then I would guess that this is the first op amp right there. U14 is the first op amp. And I got a feeling that that U14 probably got blown when someone put a very large signal into this. So I'm going to swap that out and see if it makes a difference. Here's what it looks like on a board with the jacks missing. There's L3 and L4 right there, and there's U14. So we're going to swap U14 and see if it makes a difference. Okay, I have this board on again, and how can I set this up so you can see it? There we go. All right, so I'm looking at, I want to make sure that my ICs on this preamp board have rails. So there's -15 on that pin and +15 on that one. So I know there's some voltage getting to that op amp, but when I go to U14 and check the rails on U14, I get 0.7. So that tells me that that is probably my main problem, is the first op amp U14 is not being supplied with voltages. So that is what needs to be figured out. I also see some resistors here that look like they're burned. Yep, you got 15 volts on one side and no volts on the other. So these are probably supply rails to that op amp, R102, 103. So I'm going to replace those first and see what happens. And then we'll look into that U14 again once U14 is getting supplied. Alright, let's try and remove these resistors here. this with a good camera angle. How's that? Not too bad. Alright, that's not bad. Alright, success. I'll just replace those and take it from there. Alright, one thing I noticed is I've got R102 and R103 both removed. Now, this is still my ground wire from earlier. So I can put my meter on this. Now neither one of these should be shorted to ground. Okay, neither one of them is shorted to ground, but they also shouldn't be shorted to each other. Because one of these, this is pin 4 of the U14 and the other one is pin 8. And look, I only have 3.9 ohms. So that tells me that the op amp is probably shorted, as well as these resistors blown. So that's kind of a bummer, but I'm going to have to replace this op amp. Or at least pull it out and test it and see if that short's gone. Because on my donor board, I can test the same 2 points. And the resistance between the two of those is over 100K. Okay, so I removed U14 and my dead short was still there, so that was kind of a bummer, but I removed U21 and this is kind of a bitch soldering with this phone, and you can see that the resistance is now up there. Okay, so that's good. So my dead short was caused by U21. So I'll just solder U14 back in and do a swap out of U21 from my donor board, and it should be good to go. Okay, so I put U14 back in and I swapped out U21 from my donor board. Plug the ribbon back into the bucket PCB, and let's fire it up and see what happens. Green light, and there's the blue light. All right, now for the moment of truth, let's turn the selector switch. Alright, the limit light does not come on when you turn the selector switch, so that's good news. I think it's going to work now. So put it together and power it up, and we'll listen to it with some speakers on. Alright, so I put it back together just enough to test it. And it's good as gold.